All right, if you're a contractor, you know how it is. Every single state has its own maze of regulations. Well, Delaware has one very unique rule that catches a ton of out-of-state businesses by surprise. So let's break it all down step by step so you can work there legally and with confidence. So let's get right to the big question. Do you actually need a contractor bond to work in Delaware? Now, you might hear that Delaware is one of those states with no universal bond rule and think, great, I'm off the hook. But hold on, it's not quite that simple. The real answer, believe it or not, all hinges on one single thing, where your business calls home. And here it is, the dividing line. It's actually super straightforward. If your business is based right there in Delaware, good news, you don't need a state bond. But, and this is a big but, if you're a non-resident contractor coming in from out of state, the rules do a complete 180. For you, a bond is an absolute must. Okay, so this brings us to what's officially called the non-resident rule. Let's dig into exactly what you need to know about this before you even think about starting work in Delaware. All right, here's the first number you absolutely have to remember: $20,000. Think of this as the magic number, the key threshold. The second your contract value goes over this amount, it's like you've hit a tripwire. Suddenly, a whole new set of rules kicks in and that bond requirement is officially triggered. And here's the second key number, 6%. So, you've crossed that $20,000 line, right? Now what? Well, it's simple. The amount of the bond you need is calculated as exactly 6% of your total contract value. Let's take a look at what that actually means for your wallet. So, you might be wondering, okay, what is this bond even for? And that's a great question. It's not just another random fee. The best way to think about it is like an insurance policy, but for the state of Delaware. It's basically a financial promise that your out-of-state company is going to play by all the local rules. Pay your taxes, follow the labor laws, all that good stuff. It's all about protecting the state and its workforce. Now listen up, because this is a really critical detail where a lot of people get tripped up. It's not just about one big project. Sure, a single $25,000 job is going to trigger the bond. That's obvious. But what if you do, say, 3 smaller jobs over the year that add up to more than 20 grand? Yep, you still need the bond. They're looking at the total amount of work you do in a single year. That cumulative total is what really matters. Okay, so now you know you need a bond. The next question is pretty obvious, right? How much is this thing actually going to cost me? Let's get into the numbers and figure out the real cost of compliance. This table really breaks it down for us. Let's just take a look at the $100,000 contract as an example. You see, the required bond amount is $6,000. Now, take a breath. That is not what you pay. That's just the coverage amount. Your actual out-of-pocket cost is the annual premium, which is just a tiny fraction of that. For a contractor with decent credit, you're probably looking at something like $60 to $180 for the whole year. See? Not so scary. So, how do they come up with that price? Well, the premium you pay is usually just 1 to 3% of the total bond amount. And here's some really good news, especially for smaller contractors or newer businesses. For any bond that's under $25,000, there's generally no credit check. That makes the whole process way faster and a lot simpler to get through. All right, this non-resident bond is a huge piece of the puzzle, for sure, but it doesn't exist all by itself. So let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture of licensing in Delaware, just so you know what else is on the radar. First things first, all licensing goes through one place, the Delaware Division of Professional Regulation. Pretty standard stuff. But here's another number for you to know: $50,000. If you're doing any work that goes over that amount, you're going to need a state general contractor license. And just to be super clear, this is a completely separate requirement from that $20,000 bond rule we've been talking about. Okay, now, what if you're looking to get into public works projects? Building schools, fixing roads, that kind of thing. Well, there's another major rule you have to know about. It's called the Little Miller Act, and Delaware's version is known for being one of the toughest in the entire country. And here's why it's so strict. The bond requirement for public jobs applies to 100% of them. That's right, there is no minimum contract value. It doesn't matter if your project is for $5,000 or $5 million. If it's a public job, you need performance and payment bonds, period. That is a massive difference, and it's something you absolutely have to know if you're bidding on public work. Whew, okay, we have covered a lot of ground here. So let's wrap it all up with a simple, straightforward checklist. This is your guide to making sure you've got all your bases covered when you're working in Delaware as a non-resident contractor. It really comes down to these 4 simple steps. Step 1. First, are you a non-resident? If you're based out of state, the answer is yes. Step 2. Check your contract value. Is your work for the year going to top that $20,000 mark? Step 3, do the math. Just calculate 6% of your contract total to find your bond amount. And finally, step 4, get the bond. And remember, you need to have it in hand before you start the job. That's it. Follow these 4 steps and you are good to go. And there you have it. You now know exactly what to do to work in Delaware legally and with total confidence. So if you're ready to check that final box and get compliant, you can get your surety bond quote in just a few minutes over at buysuretybonds.com.